Today is Tuesday, January 14th, 2014, and this is the start of an interview with Flora Busconi at her home on Wood Street. This is Nancy Clark, and I'm an interviewer for the Hopkinton Historical Commission's Oral History Project. Flora has lived in Hopkinton for almost 7 decades. She came to town in the late 1940s when she got married, and she was in her 1920s at that point. So Flora, if you could start out by just talking about what brought you to Hopkinton.
My husband. I met him in Natick. I always did office work, I was probably just 16 or 17 years old. And he worked at a gas station across the street. And one day after years he came, he said, "I'm getting sick of seeing you, across the street. I thought I'd meet you." That's how I met him.
Mm-hmm.
And I moved to Hopkinton when I got married.
Okay. And what did you and your husband do in Hopkinton?
Well, what he did, we lived first on Church Street, in Hopkinton. And then what he did, plumbing and heating, and we, believe it or not, we did it in the house. He started a business, and I did all the secretary, all the work, the paperwork and that. And we lived on Church Street, across from the church. And then he said, well, we're just in our early 20s, and he said, I think he just was ambitious. He used to work for a gas station, plumb heating in Natick. And then he said, I think I'll start my own business. So believe it or not, right across from the church, right at Church Street, we started the business in the house. And you believe it or not, and I just knew enough about secretary work. I didn't go to college, just high school, And then I just started working with him right from the beginning. Yeah. And we were good together, too. And it was funny. Every so often he'd go to houses, they'd call for the burner, and we'd put him in the oven, not the stove, in the other house. And I'll tell you why we built this up. And he said, he used to put them in the oven, he had to warm them up or something. We did all that, started business right in that house on Church Street in Hopkinton.
Wow.
The two of us. And I had the knowledge of, I didn't go to college, but I had the knowledge of secretary work. Yeah.
Right. And then you opened up a business.
At the house.
Right, first at your house.
And then one day he had said, he was very ambitious too. We were just young people anyways. And he said, we were living in church, and he said, Jesus, he saw this land here that was, just open. And he found out a woman 2 houses from me. She doesn't live there now. Nell's the woman that lived alone. And he went to the house and he said to her, I'd like to buy this land. Just like nothing, just the truth.
You can get it. So before the phone rang, you were just talking about your husband working on purchasing this property.
We did that house at the church. We started just in the early 20s. And he said he was ambitious. Well, like I said, I met him because he was working across the street, the gas station, on burner work.
And then he was looking at this property on Wood Street.
And then we started the business on Church Street in the house. And then he saw this property. And woman, 2 or 3 houses down, she doesn't live now. An elderly woman lived alone in the house. And he went to her and he said, this land was all vacant. And in the place where the daycare is, And he says, I think he's selling this land. She was very nice. She says, I like to see, what do you want to do? And he told her, burner work in an office, and she says, I like to see young people. That woman did. She lived alone there. That's how we started the business. And we did it on Church Street, And then when he bought this land, he built the place,
So he built the
out here.
business on the corner
Yeah.
of Wood Street
Yeah.
and Main.
And then after years, so many years we were in business, and he built that. He said, gee, I think, why buy a piece of land? We own this land, part of the building. But what we did is he checked with the town, the state, to get this okayed, because this was all in one piece. And when we bought this land, it came like a Y all down there. Isn't that funny? Right in the back.
Mm-hmm.
And she was very happy, that woman, to see that young people want to start the business.
Right. So first you built the business, Patton's Plumbing and Heating,
Yeah.
and then you built the house
Yeah.
on
So
another
then
piece of the
he said
property.
later on, he says, gee, we own this land. He had it done with the state. I had it subdivided because it was all this. This is all.
Yes.
And this road here belongs to the house. The house, I own the road.
It's
'Cause
like a
we
long
put
driveway.
the road in
Mhm.
there, and that's how we got it. But he did it the right way, the state and all that
Yeah.
goes with it. You know what I mean?
Right.
And then when he had the business, I used to walk up the hill and do all the payroll. That's why I never drove hardly at all, because
Mhm.
he used to say, you don't really have to drive. Well, I didn't.
Yeah.
So I used to do the payroll, everything for the men.
That's
I
wonderful.
was very good with
Yeah.
them.
And what else? I mean, people who live in Hopkinton now, if they haven't lived here more than 10 or 15 years, don't even remember Patton's Plumbing and Heating,
No,
because
they-
the daycare
No.
center is there now.
Because
But-
years later on, he got involved with a woman, I shouldn't tell you, but from Worcester, a woman. She was married. But she said
And is
she
that-
had a girl that worked for her had told us.
All right. And is that when he
What
did he
I
sell
say?
the business?
You know what
or-
she said to us? Somebody that worked for her. She had 8 guys before him, and she was still married, but her husband went along with it. And I'm not going to mention names. And then he said, she says, I like to. I'm going after that man. She said, that girl told us this.
Mhm.
She figured he had a business, starting a business. I don't know how she can. And then one day, I don't know, we were married over 20 years, and he says that I can't help it. I don't think I could have found it better than you, he told me.
Mhm.
But this is something that just happened. She was still married.
Oh, wow.
That's the worst part of it. And when I found out, I didn't know her and nothing. And her husband called up one day, I never met him either. He died shortly after that. He said, I see your husband walking. You know how they do with the
So
walk.
at that point, did your husband move and close the business? Or I'm just wondering how
No.
Patton's...
Well, half of the patents, we had started that business anyways. I had worked, and I used to just walk up the hill.
Right.
All the men I did, because we had like 20 guys or so. I did all that myself for him.
All right, so you had about 20 people that went out and fixed people's plumbing and
He
heating.
started with plumbing and
Yeah.
heating.
Were most of those people, did they live in Hopkinton also back then, or did some
All
of them
the
live
men
in
that
Sto-
worked there, yeah.
Mhm.
Well, be honest with you, a lot worked from Worcester.
All
Because
right.
they must have gone to Worcester Trade
Mm-hmm.
and all learning. And I'm going to say this. We had one colored guy. We never objected to who they were. We had a colored guy that worked for us.
All right, and this is a
And
long
we
time
had
ago
another
in the
guy
40s
that
and
worked for us
50s.
that was deaf and dumb.
Oh, wonderful.
But he was plumbing. And I'll never forget.
And they had a skill.
His
Mhm.
wife and him were saying they didn't live in Hopkins, they lived in West, wherever these others, they all lived in different areas, not Hopkins.
Yeah.
They applied for plumbing,
Yeah.
And one day I'll never forget when he knocked on my door early in the morning. I'm happy. He's, talk. I got my license for plumbing. He
Oh.
got it through working for us.
And this was the handicap employee
Handicap.
that you had, yeah.
And his wife, they were so nice.
Yeah.
So,
Oh, that's wonderful. So even back then, your company was giving people
we did
opportunities
everything.
that.
Yeah, we built it up.
Yeah.
And then, like I said, you can just get involved.
Yeah. Well, tell me more about, so this area of where Wood Street comes up and meets Main Street, what was it like back then? So your house was here and your business was on the corner.
We decided, why buy a piece of land? We'll have this thing. We had it done. Like I said, it came in a circle. So this is separate with the state and everything. That's how we started the house.
Yeah.
And we were going to build a house. We were living in Church Street. We were renting. And he says, yeah, I think build a house. Why buy land? But he had it subdivided, you know what I mean? By the state and everything.
Right.
And he had it just divided, and that's how we built it.
So even when you lived on Church Street, certainly, but then right here on the corner of Wood Street, you lived sort of uptown, very close to town. So did you walk into town a lot? What was Hopkinton like back then in town?
In Hopkinton, we lived across the church, across from the church.
First, yes.
I used to walk up down Brown and Smith's stores.
Can you tell people
Yeah.
about Brown and Smith
Yeah.
who maybe don't know about it?
We walked down there when they used to own it.
Mm-hmm.
I used to walk my house in Church Street. You just walk down, walked every place.
Yeah. And what was Brown and Smith like? What would you do there? What would you buy there? Is it like a 5 and 10 cent store, sort of?
No, this was like a coffee shop.
All right.
Yeah. And
So it had a counter.
It's so funny, the people that lived there, they rented from us.
Mm-hmm.
It was when God bless them. They're both dead, even the daughter died at 50-something.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, it was so nice. We got along so good. And she used to call him up at 10 o'clock at night. She'd say, Louis, that's my husband's name, you know. She said, will you go down Brown and Smith, buy cigarettes from me? She used to tell him. I never smoked in my life. My husband was smoking for a while, then eventually he stopped it. But she'd say, buy me, she wanted cigarettes.
Yeah.
Just go down there, and he'd go to the church, was right across the street. And then one of my sister-in-laws at that time had 3 or 4 kids, you know. And she says, and I lived across the church. She used to bring them every Sunday over my house while her and her husband went to church. I said, yeah, the kids, that was part of me. They can't.
Yeah,
I was
watched them.
part of them, yeah.
Uh-huh.
Then next door to us lived he was a funeral man. He was deaf. He had a funeral home right next door.
Is that Callanan's that's there today?
In Hopkinton,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Yeah, right by the church.
And then in the same street further up, there was another funeral. Both right across, and we had the church right there.
Yeah.
So we had no trouble with neighbors or anybody.
Yeah.
And the one across the street were the Nealons. You must have heard of them.
Mm-hmm.
They had a big family, like we did.
Right.
And they used to live across the street. We never bothered neighbors. One thing about neighbors, we never really went to people's houses and bothered. We knew everybody. We could say hello to everybody. Things were different, you know.
Yes.
It was nice. And I used to go to Brown Smith a lot. And of course, when he built this place, he like I said, he said this is a good corner.
Right.
And she sold the land to him, so he bought it.
Yeah.
And we had it subdivided for the house. Yeah. And we did everything.
And from here you could still walk uptown. So did you
Oh,
go up there to
so,
get your
yeah.
groceries?
Do you remember? I used to do a lot of. I did just about everything at one time at home. I don't do everything in town now.
Right. And that's one way the town has really
Yeah.
changed. Mm-hmm.
But I did. I never had. But I still always take care of Hopkinton.
Mm-hmm.
And then I take care, not the town, the church.
Yeah.
And that's my ambition.
Yeah.
So.
You mentioned the Nealons on Church Street, and
They were
they are a
wonderful.
very important family. Many
Yeah,
people know them in
very
Hopkinton because they had
And the Murphys were next door. We knew everybody.
right.
That's the worst part of it, the wonderful thing. We knew everybody in the street, and everybody spoke to you, even if you didn't go to Paradise, you had the TV, and Billy Smith, these old Brown
Brown
and
and Smith.
I'm just saying, we were so close with everybody, and
Yeah.
yet we didn't bother people going over the house.
Yeah, that's
Things were
nice.
different.
Nice small town.
The world's changed a lot.
Mhm.
Wonderful people. I couldn't get over how we knew everybody in the street. I used to go around Smith's a lot.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
and everybody waved to you. You just got to know everybody, that's all.
And when you moved here onto Wood Street, were there other neighbors that you can remember, or were you much more isolated back then?
No, I'll tell you what happened.
Yeah. What did this area look like?
See, the land, when we bought the land, the woman took the houses down. They used to live there. We bought it from her. That land was funny. It came right across the back, down where Patton's is. But the whole back of here was part of her land. Isn't that funny?
Yeah.
And there was no road here at all. We put the road there.
To get to your house.
Yeah, he got the permit for, he said, my husband used to say, gee, it's crazy to buy a piece of land when we get, let's see what we can do here. So we did the right way with the state and whatever that goes with it. And that's how this house became here. We figured, why buy the land? It's been here since.
Yeah.
And it was, like I said, it came in the back. We had all of it,
Right. Right. And what do you remember from when you were first in Hopkinton about some of the community traditions? Maybe the marathon.
Oh, well, let me tell you about the marathon. The marathon, well, I said when I was in Natick, when I was with kids, we used to say, oh, my goodness, let's go straight. And we used to run to see the marathon. And I said, here we are in Hopkinton. We only ran to the town, But what I did do is, I worked as volunteer all my life, too. I've never taken a penny since I was married.
It's wonderful.
Yeah, and so anyway, so then the marathon was up there, and then I said to myself, they had an ad in the paper, they said there'd be like some rooms, some beds, to give them free. For 3 days, it wasn't one day.
The runners.
Friday, I took them for 3 years. So the first year I took, the 3 guys came over. I didn't know what I was going to get. The first year was a girl and a boy. They came from the same town, state, but they didn't know each other. That's the first 2 I never get. They didn't know each other, but they both, see, the town gave us who we just put our name in that we would open a house. Then the year after that, 3 fellows came over, and I had them for Friday till Monday, or till some say Tuesday, and they worked from the Pentagon.
Oh.
Yeah, and then they called me the year later and said, can we come there again for my help? I said, sure. So I had them 2 years in a row. So I had about 3 or 4 years. And there were no trouble at all. I gave them each one room, because I got a big house, downstairs. Each had their own bed. I mean, the room, some had couches, but I didn't have any of the 2 of them to go together. And I stayed in that little room in the office, back there. So it was nice. You just were friendly with everybody. We love the idea of the Hopkinton. I tell everybody now, too, even I went to a party the other day, the Albanians, and my cousin, and it threw a shower, I said, well, I come from Hopkinton when the marathon started. I tell everybody.
It is our claim to fame.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and that's what happened. And then I worked for volunteer. I worked 9 years. Now this is while I was married.
Mm-hmm.
9 years I worked for the Framingham Library, volunteer. And then I worked, while I was working there, next door was, what was there in Framingham? you know what I mean? People painted and sewed, and people used to go inside there
To do work on some buildings? Or?
No, I worked as a volunteer. They were greeting the people. They had people
Okay.
taking artwork, you know what I mean?
At the Danforth Museum?
Yeah, the
There's some
museum.
art classes
the
there.
museum, that's what it was.
Mhm.
I worked 7 years there as volunteer. I didn't go every day. I went like one day there, one day to the library, I'd say 9 years. So it's all been volunteer. Then the fellow, what's his name, Nicanello from Natick, was running for vice president or something anyways. I knew the family very well. And he said, gee, Flo, you can't stay home doing nothing. Work for me. So I worked for him for a while, for volunteer. It was a lot of fun. You used to have that.
And that was very common in your generation. Women volunteered.
Yeah, that's what I did. That's all I ever did. And then I went with him for a while. He didn't get it, but there were 5 guys running for vice president, whatever he was running for.
Yeah.
But anyways, and then I don't know. After so many years, my husband get involved with this woman that I heard.
Well, and when you talk about volunteering, and you still, I know I first met you because you make beautiful Afghans that you give away to groups in Hopkinton.
I give Afghan all the time.
Yeah.
I give them. I make one after when I get through with one thing, I make another. Now the ones I'm making now will be for October when we have a bazaar in Natick for the church.
Nice.
I made last year. I made 2 Afghans. I always make 2 Afghans for the raffle. And sweaters.
Yeah.
And I made sweaters.
Mm-hmm.
I made sold them all. They do what they want with them.
Right.
But I ran the bazaar with Karen from Framingham. She's a teacher at Framingham.
Okay. I'm gonna ask you another question about Hopkinton. We talked about how you housed some marathoners during the marathon. Did you go up to the marathon and watch it? Can you tell us what the marathon was like back then?
You know why? I did for a while. Yes, I used to go uptown because I used to work in Hopkinton for a while, volunteer uptown one of the stores. See, do you know Hopkinton at all?
Mm-hmm.
You know what Country Plus is?
Yes, I do.
Those 3 stores.
Right.
I own those.
Oh.
Yeah. See, when my husband
So you own the buildings?
leaving me, no, well,
You own the buildings, yeah.
he said to me, he took all the money, everything that you made, everything in the bank, but I don't know what made me say it. I said, what about those 3 stores? I spoke up.
Good for you.
He says, you can, and he said to his lawyer, he says, well, she can we better give it to her so she won't look for anything else. Because he owns a lot of pot. He's worth quite a bit of money.
So Country Plus, that whole area.
Those 3
I bet
stores.
you've seen the.
I used to go up there, yeah.
You've seen the businesses in those in your buildings change over the years. Do you remember what businesses might have been in those buildings in the
I
past?
don't know what was in the past. The only thing I remember, because when my husband took over first the stores in Target, I did them all over. I'm not kidding. He did nothing. I put the vinyl, put new roofs on.
Wonderful.
I've done everything for them. And I've been
Wonderful.
very reasonable about the rent. I don't care about the rent.
Yeah. Well, that's good.
It's
So
just to keep it going, you know.
So that's something.
So I had the same people that lived there, worked there for a long time.
Mhm.
But there was something, I know there was somebody told me that was there before. And Edison Electric.
Okay. The electric.
I don't
yes.
know, I don't remember that.
Com Edison.
See, when my husband first took the stores, I don't know what it was. They used to be like a 5 and 10 or some other store there
Mm-hmm.
that he took over when he got the store, and then he started renting. In fact, the girl that's been there, they've all been there 20 years or something.
That's
Well, I'm very good too.
That's good. That's good.
You know, and my rent's reasonable.
Yeah.
and they don't bother me at all, and they're still there. And he said, what would we do without you, Flo? What do you, with this, making any money? And I said, that's all right. So what I did do is I did those stores over. I put electric in, I put the sewer in.
Mm-hmm.
I put vinyl, the whole sewer. My husband did nothing, when he had it. But I did it all over the outside.
To keep the buildings up.
Yeah.
Nicely. Well, that's good. That's good.
So that's
and,
what,
yeah.
Go ahead.
And what other? I'm just trying to pull out some other recollections you have about Hopkinton in the olden days. Any other community traditions you can remember besides the marathon? Anything else that you did or that people did?
Well,
Parades?
the other thing I've been doing for Hopkinton mostly, I don't belong to these women's club all these clubs because I belong to Natick. I don't want the women's club.
Right,
I don't want
your church, yeah.
Even if that's my town.
Yeah.
But I do everything for them. So then I start making things for the women's club, and
Right.
I do everything for the town. I donate. My knitting, my
wonderful.
crocheting.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Do you remember something like the Horribles Parade, or were there any other
Well, the
sort of
parade-
celebrations in town
Yeah,
periodically?
Oh, yeah. They had one of the parades, big parade a few times, and one of the big parades we had a float there, or we had something.
We
with
meaning
the-
patents,
Yeah,
plumbing and heating? Mm-hmm.
yeah, we did that too, yeah.
Yeah.
And right now what I do is for the town, if I see something they're going to start up, they're going to do, I just volunteer, I'll give you
Volunteer.
this, I'll give you that.
That's wonderful.
It's all giving.
Yeah. So you've talked a little bit about some of the changes, but what do you think has changed in Hopkinton from?
Well, see, I lived across the street from the Catholic Church.
Right.
With no trouble at all with any of the people. The other thing I've seen different, not too much, the new people in the town.
It's grown.
You gotta say, you got new people that everybody keeps talking about. The new people want to change the town. They want to change this, want to change that. And then, quite a few years ago, what the post office is?
Right.
Yeah. We said, I don't know what happened, the money that my husband was doing, building or owned or took over. We owned the post office for a while.
The
He
land.
did. He named it Flora Realty. But see, then when he got involved with this other woman, of course, the real estate. And that didn't last too long with the first one, because she says, I'm just going, she was going after somebody with money. That was
That's
the
too
kid.
bad, yeah.
You know how.
So,
That's part of
so
life.
you've seen, I'm sure you've seen the downtown area change a lot. You mentioned the post office and probably the fire station, the police station have all had very large expansions.
They've all been new, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The increase of population.
That's it.
Yeah. How about the cars out in front of where you live?
The what?
The cars and the traffic on Wood Street.
Well, it's not, what they're trying to do is, I can't say, I'm not talking about the neighbors, but what they wanted to do a few years ago, not too long ago, they wanted to have, Hopkinton well,
Mhm.
Elm Street,
Yes.
and they wanted to, I don't know how many years ago that was, but they wanted to have the Elm Street people come up this way, but some of the neighbors didn't like that. I didn't want to butt in. I never butted anything because I was far of the back. Never bothered anything. I'll tell you one thing about me. Anything the town wanted, I'm from the town first.
Mm-hmm.
I'm from the
Okay.
town, not the people. But this isn't a big street, it's and the corner house, she put up a cake because she wants to do hairdos at the house.
Right.
I'm not
There's a
talking to
business
nice
there.
people,
Mhm,
but
mhm.
they had the, and that went on and on and on. But nothing much, mostly, that was the main thing. But they did want to cut the Main Street, you know, it goes like a Y.
Right,
They
the
wanted
fork at
the
Main
car.
and Wood.
I think they're still gonna start working that. They
Mhm.
tried that, but people that used to live there at the corner, they put up a kick. I know they got their way. They didn't wanna.
What's hard is more people move into town, and it's probably not only Hopkinton, the
We get
surrounding towns are
Well, I'll
growing.
tell you, they said the town is now up to around 16,000 people. At one time, probably when I was here, it was probably about 7 or 8.
Yeah.
There's a difference, yeah. This is a nice town, and they want to still do people, and they get good schools, the people say, yeah, everything that they do is good. So they try to do, well, everybody talks about it, says Hopkinton's one of the nicest towns around, yeah. And they do a good job for the marathon, too. You gotta give them a lot of credit. No trouble. What happens in Boston, most of the fellows, when they have thousands, you know, they meet up there, or they get beds up there, you know, they go before they open, like me. Not only me, two other people took people.
To house runners.
But what they did is they tried to, how should I explain it? They're trying to have the marathon, more people do it. And they changed the thing. It used to be right at the front of it, you know. And then they moved it back, you know, a few years ago. They probably started at 10 o'clock now.
Right, all the changes.
Yeah.
Yeah, with more runners. So you remember when there were just some runners up by the Common, and they didn't have the long lines stretching down the street and around the corner of
Yeah.
runners?
They just changed a few years ago.
Yeah.
Trying to bring it. I don't know why they did that, but it doesn't matter, but they did it.
It's gotten much larger. Yeah, yeah.
And then when I own those 3 stores I told you, so when the first started, the marathon, I used to go and stay in one of the stores so I could see the beginning.
You could watch from this one of your stores.
Yeah, I could
Right.
yeah.
Yeah,
So
it's interesting.
between the town, I think this town between you is going to grow, that's all,
Mhm.
even more so. A lot of people like living in none of these developments that they're putting in. People are moving, they want to live in, it's not a small town, but now it's up to double since I've been here, you know.
The town has a good location.
Yes, it
I
is.
think that's one.
It's going to be that. But the biggest thing, I think they still like to have the cars, instead of going to Elm Street, go straight this way.
Mhm.
That's something they get to argue with the
Oh.
neighbors. different
Changed,
people.
right.
You can't blame, well, you know, the neighbors and people have a right to give their opinions too.
Yeah.
That would have been started about 4 or 5 years ago. It's too bad. I think it would have been good. And, well, I shouldn't tell you, I'm not going to name them. One of the neighbors said to me, because I don't have many neighbors, it's only people, the house next door now is just rented. It's not even, you know, people come and go. They said, gee, Flo, why don't you come with me over a corner house that used to live there? I don't want to mention names.
Yeah.
She said, she marched and said, you know, not going to take this road away from me. She put up a lot of the, you know.
Oh, so she went to some meetings and talked to the town
And
officials
then
probably.
she said to me one day, she said, well, why don't you come? I said, that's not affecting me. I'm for the town. I'm not for people. I can't explain that.
Yeah, that's good. Well, it sounds like you have a lot of wonderful recollections of your life in Hopkinton. Is there anything else that you can think of
Yeah.
that you want to talk about Hopkinton and what it was like,
Yeah.
or how it's changed?
And then and let me tell you this, this daycare that came here
Yes.
in my house, because my husband, my ex-husband, you know, he sold the land, and see, I'm a butter there, and I own this road, and I own our part of that.
Right.
They said if it wasn't for me, they would have had a school there. I never objected, because I own the land. Anything to do with kids, I said.
Yes.
Anything with kids. And they thanked me. If it wasn't for me, they wouldn't have had a school there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the New England Daycare Center.
Makes me feel good.
Yeah.
It was no trouble at all. And look at how nice it turned out to be.
Yes.
But it happens to be my side of the road. That's what it was.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's wonderful. So you helped affect progress. And is there anything else that you can think about that you want to say before we?
It's just a good town.
It is a good town.
Yeah.
It
And
is a
I
good
said to myself, I says, I'll never, everybody says, well, you will go to Natick someday. You won't have I said, no way. Hopkinton is my town, and Natick's my church.
Yeah. Yeah, where you grew
When
up.
I
in the
used to
church.
go with him to church, there's no trouble. I never had trouble with church. If it was Protestant, Catholic, or whatever it was.
So did you ever attend church in Hopkinton?
Oh, yes, a lot.
What, was that St. John's or?
Oh, I used to go with my husband a lot.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I never, like I said, he came a few times to Natick. I never went to Natick much. I used to go more to Hopkinton.
Yeah.
I used to go to them all the time.
Yeah.
Those
Good.
things didn't bother me.
Yeah, yeah. All right, well, thank you so much for all the recollections that you shared with us. And I'm just going to close by saying this is the end of the Tuesday, January 14th, 2014 interview with Flora Busconi. The interviewer was Nancy Clark.